What's going on, friends? This is the Year One Wrestling Podcast, a show that dives deep into the early stages and formation of your favorite professional wrestlers, bringing out their struggles, their fears, and most importantly, their most interesting stories. I'm your host, the King of Chaos, Logan Black. Thank you so very much for checking us out on whatever platform you enjoy your podcasts on. We're all about showing love here, so if you dig what you hear, or if you just feel like being awesome, go right ahead, show some love, hit the subscribe button, leave a review, tell a friend, help us get the word out on the show. Before we go any further, I just want to hype up a couple things that I would love for you guys to check out. I'm going to be wrestling yet again very, very soon. Synergy Professional Wrestling will be back in New Jersey on August 29th. It is an outdoor show, lots of fresh air, but masks will be required, of course, because we still got to be smart about this whole global pandemic thing, you know what I mean? Outdoor show, masks required, social distancing will be occurring, and you'll be watching some awesome wrestling as only Synergy Wrestling can provide. I'll be there. The Godfather of the Chokeslam, Chris Benet, will be there. The Apostles of Chaos, back in New Jersey, and back to stomping mud holes in people's faces. In addition, we've got more wrestling news because things are starting to, I guess, go back to some semblance of normal. The T2T, Technique 2 Training wrestling facility is now open and operating. I am training over there. I'm getting some ring work in. I am upping my cardio as I always am trying to do. But if you're interested in being a professional wrestler or you're looking to find a new spot to train at, go ahead and hit that Facebook page up. Ask any kind of questions. All the information you're looking for will be given to you, and I hope to see you down there. All the fun stuff we talk about on the podcast in terms of a positive, fun, hard-working environment is all the stuff that we're looking to create over there. And hopefully that's something that's going to bring more people into the fold, so make sure to check that out. Also, before we continue on, I'd like to give a shout-out to the Good Cop, Bad Cop Wrestling Podcast, who managed to shout out this show on Twitter, got us a bunch more followers, a lot of interaction, and it was dope to see. Because when they did, a lot of other podcasts had hopped in, talked about, hey, this is what we're listening to, this is what we enjoy. And it's kind of dope to see people within that community, the very, very small wrestling podcast community, all hop in and support each other. Love to see that kind of stuff, so thank you very, very much. On to this week's guest, the Clockwork Angel, Katred. A lot like last week's guest in Jason Karloff, I have a very, very personal relationship with Katred. I've actually got to search through my pictures on my phone, but when I mentioned last week that, yeah, Karloff was one of two people who married my partner and I, Katred was the other. We had two wrestlers making wrestling references to a crowd of what was essentially half wrestlers and half people who have never in their lives heard of wrestling. Just kind of sitting there going, oh, what does tag in mean? Or when Karloff goes, I've spilt blood with Jake, literally and figuratively, and all the wrestling people start laughing, and all the other people are like, oh, is that sanitary? Of course it's not sanitary, but it's pro wrestling. I met Katred a number of years back. She'd come through to train with us, always just a positive, bright shining light at training, always insanely hardworking, and it's great to see her continued success as she continues to truck through this wacky world of pro wrestling. But again, on a completely personal note, there's a reason that I ended up choosing her. Her and I just connected off the bat as just super close friends. A wonderful, wonderful human being. And honestly, it's crazy to think that, like, somebody in wrestling that you're close with, and, like, that's not even, like, the core reason why you're friends with them. Because it's crazy. There are so many people within professional wrestling, and any wrestler will tell you this. This is, like, the way that it goes. That's the general connection that, like, all of us have together. We love wrestling, and I probably wouldn't be friends with a lot of these people if we hadn't met through pro wrestling, or if we didn't have that in common, because just in general, we're probably different people. Katrin and I are built from the same cloth. I think on the countless road trips that we've taken together, not once have we ever really discussed, like, I don't know, current wrestling or any... I mean, outside of, like, you know, the discussions of wrestling psychology, or like, hey, so, like, here are my thoughts on this, or why this is okay and this is not okay. It's usually just about, like, music or weird pop culture references. Like, I mentioned it in the podcast, but I cannot do enough justice. When you are on a road trip and Katred has the phone or the iPod, or she's flipping through Spotify, whatever, She is the queen of playlists. And even Juba, who would consider himself to be the king of playlists, nah, Katred 100% is the absolute best. I truly do wish, I think I might kind of bother her at this point to be like, homegirl, I need you to just, for the people, do it for the people. Go ahead and hit that rap verse in Waterfalls. Put that on video, and I will put it up on the YouTube account. But I digress. Again, I can go on for days about how wonderful of a human being she is, how much I respect her as a professional wrestler, but I would love for you guys to hear her side of things and her incredible journey into pro wrestling. Katred on the Year One Wrestling Podcast. All right, cool. So we're here with the Clockwork Angel, Katred, one of my favorite human beings in the universe. How are you doing, homegirl?
I'm good. I miss you.
Yeah, I miss you too. At this point we were seeing, at this point nobody's seeing anybody, but being able to see you at the shows that I would was always a massive highlight. And then, of course, the other lovely things were other places where we'd see each other. It was always great gatherings. Like, was the last time I saw you was at Tara and Cannonball's wedding, right?
Yep, that was the last outing for all of us, I feel like.
Right, it was. That's crazy how that was literally the last outing for most of pro wrestling in the Northeast.
But what a way to sort of I don't want to say goodbye. That sounds awful. But what a great gathering to be at if that was going to be our last for a while.
Oh yeah, I think nobody has any regrets on that. And beyond wonderful is the fact that, Jeff and Tara were able to have that day without any of the worries that COVID is kind of bringing out. It was great to see that happen, and then the world fell apart the next week in the States, at least. I mean, the world was reeling still.
Right, absolutely.
But now switching gears to happy wrestling related stuff, let's start talking about your career in the business. Let's start with what athletic background, if any, did you have prior to hopping into wrestling?
Oh man, I was huge baseball, softball athlete. It started when I was about 8 years old, and played throughout. And then in high school, I was co-captain for both sophomore and senior year of high school, and then was looking to sort of take that into college, but then wrestling.
I'm sitting here going through with the answers, and I'm looking through my questions and stuff, and I'm like, well, I know the answer to all of these as it pertains to you, but so it's gonna be hard for me to I'm gonna hold back completely in terms of not jumping in and being like, oh yeah, softball.
So yeah. I mean, I was pretty. I mean, softball was definitely my love, but I was still athletic with, I don't know, playing volleyball, playing just all sorts of sports, and I heard, I think you mentioned that you're a theater kid.
I am a theater kid. I was a theater kid. At this point, I'm an old douchebag who sits at home. But yeah, I was really, really into theater. I went to high school to try and do it and gave up on it the first year because of politics.
I was sort of what would you call that? I guess a side theater kid. What would happen is, since I was in softball and training all the time, the season and practice for whatever play or musical that was going on was always at the same time. So I always had to pick one or the other, and just softball was going. And so anytime that would finish, I would kind of go and run lines and songs with my friends who were in theater. So it's this athletic but really a theater kid at heart.
I was gonna mention, I remember you coming into training one day and going I played softball and I had this idea for a move, and it was this dope European uppercut that you threw with
windmill.
with the windmill with the wind up that softball players do. I always thought that was so dope.
I forgot about that. Oh my god. Oh man, I'm gonna have to add that.
You're gonna have to. You got to write down your moves. I'm telling you, enough brain trauma has made me figure out. You gotta write down all your shit.
You're so right. I'm definitely adding that for the next time.
Now, what are your first or earliest memories of wrestling?
Oh man, So I guess my earliest memory is probably the one that sort of sets it all off in a way. I guess my earliest memory might be with my grandmother and me. Wrestling sort of was passed down through the women in my family. So my great grandmother watched, my grandmother watched, my mom. And I distinctly remember always sitting on my grandmother's lap and we're watching WWF, especially on Saturdays. It was always Saturdays, like around 1 o'clock or so. And I remember sitting on her lap and watching Macho Man Randy Savage all hooked up in the ropes. And here comes Jake the Snake with his python, and bam, just the snake attacking his arm. My grandmother freaking out, but also loving it. And I love that memory. It's one of my favorites. But the main one would be the now infamous one, I should say. It's me in my grandmother's room, and I had, oh man, I'm gonna date myself now. Jesus. I had my Teddy Ruxpin doll. But he was not Teddy Ruxpin that day, I should say. He was the Ultimate Warrior, and I was the Macho Man, Randy Savage. And we were having a full-out match on my grandmother's bed, and I threw him to the floor, and I decided to give him the big old elbow drop, and I jumped from there, flew across the room, and managed to hit the corner part of my eye right on the edge of the bureau, the cabinet, and just busted me open. But of course you don't react to that right away. I didn't know. I was just like, I did the Peter Griffin. I was there. It's just like, it sucks. And then it's always when you finally look in the mirror, and it was just, I mean, I'm talking Ric Flair levels of just streaming down my face. And of course, that's the moment when you're little like that. I was probably, I want to say 5 or 6. You see that image, and that's when you just screaming. And here comes my mom running up the stairs and freaking out. And she just grabs me and starts running down the stairs. And I distinctly remember apologizing over and over again to my mom, going, I'm sorry. One, thinking I was in trouble, but also I remember saying sorry because I thought that she was going to make me stop watching wrestling after. It's like, don't take this away from me.
You've got like top level color, and you're sitting there like worried about losing wrestling, not your life, not anything else. It's just wrestling.
Rushed to the hospital, had to get 6 stitches, all messed up. So that was my first wrestling injury of my life.
The first one ever.
My first one ever, not my last, but definitely my first. But it's still I love that memory because it shows, at least for me, how important wrestling was to me, that I could just be like, yeah, certainly. Okay, sorry, but I don't want to watch wrestling again.
And you're starting off with a 10 on the Muda scale, so like, where else do you go from there? So at that point, you're this huge fan as a kid, and finally, when do you decide you are going to start wrestling, and where do you go?
Oh no. I decide, along with one of my best friends at the time, he's a high school buddy. We decided that we were going to try once the very first auditions for Tough Enough came out.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember just like the promo commercials saying.
Oh yeah. Those were the best.
Right? Sponsored by Lugs. And they were just like, yeah, you want to be a WWE superstar? And you're like, yeah. And they asked you to send in not just a form that you had to, of course, print out and fill out, but you had to film yourself. You had to film yourself cutting a promo, and you had to film yourself doing, I don't know, something athletic. And, my friend was the one who's like, we can do this. Like before, it never occurred to us that this could be something that we could actually do. And as much as we both loved it, so we were like, yeah, let's take this chance, even though our parents will probably kill us. Let's go for it. So of course we went into promo mode because that was easy. We could do that right there. But then it was his idea, like, okay, well, I should mention, like, this is around when I was 18, 19. He said, well, we have to do something athletic, so let's go to the gym. Let's do something at a gym. And we found this gym. It was called Omni Gym. It was in Westchester. And they had boxing rings set up all the way in the back of the gym. It's a huge gym. And he said, we'll just film ourselves, like, doing matches. And it's like, okay, well, but we've never had a match. It's like, we've watched enough wrestling. We can figure this out. This is just a PSA to all your listeners. Do not bump in a boxing ring. Please. Just don't. I'm sure everyone's smart enough to do that, but just in case somebody might be thinking about it, just no. There's so many schools now do that. We didn't know about schools and whatnot. We weren't privy to that.
The funny part about all this is the gym at Gleason's for Johnny Rods, where I broke in, was a modified boxing ring.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and still to this day is among the absolute stiffest ever. And as a side note to that as well, there was a ring owned by a promoter in New York who did not know how to put his ring together, but apparently the ring converted from both a boxing ring to a wrestling ring, and when putting it together at one point for an entire half of the show, it was a boxing ring. And I just remember the opening match on that show was Jack Gallo and Dan Moff, who had what was that?
Oh my gosh, Dan.
Yeah.
That's amazing. They
had a banger of a match, of course, in this miserable ring, and they come back and they just go, yo, fuck that ring. I forget that. But yes, boxing rings, you're in this gym, and you're making mistakes.
And we are making on top of the fact that it's a boxing ring, we don't know what we're doing. We're trying to bump on this thing, most likely doing this all types of wrong. But we did, we would film ourselves. I still have the tape somewhere of just, we set it up on a bench and we would have these matches. But you know what? As awful as an idea that was, just the fact that we would have these, like, we just wouldn't stop. It would be like 15, 20-minute matches. And the more we did them, the more we sort of understood the psychology of a match just by, keeping it going. And, this makes sense now because, we didn't necessarily know the terms heat and, this is your comeback now. But it started making sense. So I actually really appreciate that we sort of went through that. Oh, funny enough. God, I can't believe I forgot about this. One of those times that we were filming ourselves at Omni Gym, there was this guy, where the boxing rings were, there was an opening for the weight room. And of course, when we put on matches, all the guys and girls in the weight room just stopped, put down their weights, and they're like, what the hell are these kids doing? But they would stay and they would watch. But there was this one guy that kept hanging around watching us, and finally came up to us one day and he started sort of critiquing us, and not in a bad way. And he was just like, I don't mean to, to press upon you or critique you like this. Just, I used to wrestle. And we're like, oh, that's awesome. He's like, yeah. And it turned out to be SD Jones.
Whoa. That's a revelation right there.
And he started talking to us about, he's in WrestleMania and who he worked with. And it was so cool to have just somebody who knew the business and who was a wrestler. And wow, he decided to come up to us and talk to us about this. So it was a cool moment for us.
Yeah, that's kind of surreal, man.
Yeah, it was really cool. So we did that for a while, and then, as things happen, life happens sometimes, and my grandparents got sick, and I had to start working way more to help my mom out. My mom's a single parent, and it was only us trying to make things work and try to pay for all the hospital bills and all this and whatnot. So this dream got put on the back burner for many a year. And it wasn't until 2013 that I went to my first WrestleMania, which was 29 right here in MetLife Stadium, and had a great time. But went to the Raw after, and that was when everything sort of clicked for me. I had an amazing time there, and I just remember thinking as the show was over, it's like, as a fan, it can't get any better than what I experienced tonight. The only way it could get better is if I'm in the middle of that ring doing what everybody, the guys and gals just did. So I made a sort of promise to myself that night that I was going to give it a go. And I was going to try again. So much so that I have that date tattooed on my wrist to sort of remind me.
I do remember that.
Yeah. So I called up my friend who we, same friend that all those years ago. And I told him, and he was so hyped. He was just like, yes, I'm totally down. Let's do this. And we went in with the goal of, and mind you, we did not know about indie wrestling that much. We never went to shows. Everything was really WWE that we had gone to. So we didn't know if there were established intergender tag teams. But that's how we wanted to come in. We wanted to come in as the first female-male tag team that would just come through the indie scene and just be the best damn tag team you've ever seen. So we started calling up schools in the area. We started looking up for schools in the area, mainly in the New York area. And we came, three that came up were, funny enough, House of Hardcore, who was run by Tommy Dreamer. One was House of Glory, which is out in Queens, and FTW, which is Fight the World Wrestling, also in Queens. We really wanted to go to House of Hardcore for obvious reasons. We're like,
certainly,
of course. But we just, for us, the tuition we couldn't afford it at the time, and he had just had a baby, so money was tight. So we were just trying to go with one. It was the other two were closer. House of Hardcore was all the way in Poughkeepsie, and the other ones, tuition wise, they were a little bit better. So we reached out to both, and we basically based it on whoever answered us first. And FTW was the one that we got a hold of first.
I feel like that's an underrated reason to go to a spot. Is literally, that they got in touch first. It's underrated, in my opinion. You end up going to FTW, which was this Queens or Long Island FTW? Because I know there were two at the time.
There were, and this was the Queens location, which was in Ridgewood.
Okay. And that was under who at the time? Because I know, again, like, these things get wishy-washy in terms of years and times. So who was it running things?
At that time, it was Earl Cooter.
The current Brian Idol.
The current Brian Idol. He was running FTW at the time.
So talk to us about what it was like training over there. In fact, just go directly to your first day of training, and then from there, let's talk about what else training was like over there.
Sure. Well, so this is obviously the year one podcast, so I'm counting my first year as October of 2013 all the way to October of 2014. Even though we had gone to FTW in August, and there's a reason for that. Me and my tag partner went in August, and at the time, I'm pretty sure they were not at. So FTW and House of Glory sort of shared a ring. Right. They shared space, just on different days. So I think FTW was maybe Mondays and Wednesdays, and House of Glory was Tuesdays, Thursdays, I think. And there was also another space before the one that they're at currently, which was the International Boxing and Fitness, I think it was called. It was on Cypress Avenue in Ridgewood, Queens. And funny enough, I started in a boxing ring. I came right back to it.
Wrestling goes full circle.
It goes way full circle. So the first day, we walked in there. Cooter had told us, obviously wear loose clothing, sneakers. If you have knee pads, great, bring. So of course we ran to Modell's and got knee pads and everything. We walked in, and I think even without speaking, me and my partner just seeing the ring you just get this feeling like, oh, this is real. That's a ring, and we're going to get in there, and this is really happening. And I think that what really stood out to me, or the memory that stood out to me the first day was, and even though it's super simple, it was just getting into the ring, through the ropes, because you've seen it so many times. It seems like such a simple thing, but it was probably the coolest moment for me on that day. It was okay, it was ta-da, here we are. This is it. Go. That day, I'm pretty sure, like you said, it's probably going to be a little muddled because it was a while back, but I'm pretty sure we ran the ropes, which I did horribly. We probably did, we were probably whipping each other, which again, not great. My partner, however, because he's super athletic, he was in a ton of sports too, and he also has a martial arts background. It was like nothing to him. So while I was super happy, I was also like, this mother, God damn. But yeah, we did pretty basic things the first day. And I'm pretty sure they asked us to bump the first day as well, which, if nothing else, that was the only thing that I could do. That was the only thing that when I did it, they went, yeah, that's right. Good job. And I was like, oh, thank God, because everything else was not happening. Lockups were really, that was a cool moment too. And me and my partner got to, and it was great because we locked up and we looked at each other, and it was just these grins on our faces because we're like, yes, it's finally happening. I think our inner child was just so excited. But yeah.
And the coolest thing about that, and I try and get this idea, I get the idea from a lot of people where, showing up, seeing the ring for the first time, being able to, it's like the first time in church when boom, it just hits you. But you guys have locked up with each other a million times prior to this, I'm sure, correct? Right. But now you're standing in a ring, and yeah, it's a completely different feeling.
It totally is. Completely agree with that. It's a totally different feeling when everybody is sort of surrounding, everyone's up on the apron and watching you, and it's because you're training to do something that you love, as opposed to, well, we were just sort of messing around before. We didn't know exactly where our hands were supposed to be, or,
Yeah. Makes all those little details make the difference.
Yeah, exactly.
What were your goals at that point in wrestling?
Our goal, between me and him, like I said, was just, we wanted to be a great established tag team that people had never, that was unique, that was maybe unusual, but obviously at the time, because we had grown up with, and like a lot of people, we'd grown up with WWE, yeah, of course, that was always in our sights. Maybe we could actually do that, because God, that would be great. That's what we've always dreamed of. That's what we've always watched. But he was good in sort of making sure that we always made sure we were present. Yeah, we can have that goal all the way over there, but let's just start with getting good at this. Let's get good at maybe just being good enough to have our first match and whatnot, and start from there.
Who else was there at the time with you helping out, or anybody of note in that class?
In the class? Oh my God, yes. Faye was there. Miss Faye Jackson.
Oh, really?
She was there. She went on different days than I did. So I only got to see her every once in a while, but that was the first time I met Faye. And she was the best. And she made me feel so comfortable and so welcome. And it was just, we instantly hit it off. And it was great. I loved her from the first time. And we had locked up. Oh God, I just remember. It's so funny when you're talking about things and all of a sudden memories just like punch you in the cranium. I remember them saying, okay, well, you two lock up, me and Faye, and just, have a 2-minute match, just go with. And I was still brand new. I don't know why they said to do that. But like I barely knew anything. And she had bumped for me, and I just thought, okay, well, she's on the floor. What could I do now? I'll give her a leg drop, not really knowing how to do a leg drop. My gosh. And like the full force of my legs just smacked her right in the face. And it was bad. And I felt so bad. But she was like, it's okay. It's not, don't worry about it. She was really, really sweet. Who else was there? There was another, I guess, sort of like a side trader. Somebody would come in every once in a while. Grim Reaper.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, who we loved. Me and my partner we loved him because, I don't know, we're originally from the Bronx, and he just had that Bronx vibe about him. And it was just, he was easy to relate to, and he would always take us aside and be like, hey, work on this, don't try not to do this, but this, and did it in such a real, like, just a real way. Yeah, that was always great. So that happened in August. And then maybe a couple of weeks, we were only there maybe like 3 weeks. And I started, I mean, you know this, but I've dealt with severe anxiety and depression for years and years and years. And I started noticing that before going to class, I would get these like major anxiety attacks. Thank goodness I had my partner there at the time, because he would always just like bring me back down, but they were still getting like out of hand. So he said, you know what, why don't we take a little break if you want? Let's go today. Let's go today and let's just have the class, and then we'll just take a break until you calm down. And I was like, all right, yeah, let's do that. Man, I shouldn't have gone that day. Or maybe I should have. Maybe I should have, because that helped everything out. Everything happens for a reason. At least I believe that. I went that day. Mind you, this is, again, we are only maybe 2 weeks in, 2.5 at most. And they had us doing back body drops.
Oof.
And I look at this now and I'm just like, I don't think a lot of us should have been doing back body drops that soon. But whatever. And we went around, we were all in a line. Somebody was, in the base and giving us back body drops. And the first time I was like, it kind of felt kind of funny, but they were just like, it's okay, just try again. I'm like, I should have just listened to my instincts. Everything was in my body was screaming, no. And I went the second time and I got some height and I landed right on my arm. And I ended up, I didn't know then, but all I know is that I got tunnel vision really fast, rolled off to the side, and ended up severely straining the ligaments in my elbow, in my arm. And so much so that I couldn't bend it for the next 3 weeks or whatnot. Yeah, I couldn't bend it at all, like at all. And it was an interesting time, because in that period, much like we're in right now, like we have all this time to sit and reflect, I was sort of thinking, gosh, is this a sign that I shouldn't be doing this anymore? Maybe this wasn't for me. Look at that, like, this was simple and I failed at it. And I was feeling really bad. But I noticed that while I was healing, I really missed being in there. And I wanted so badly to go back. And I think that was the test. I figured if during this time I was kind of like, if relief was coming over me and I was just like, I don't want to ever do that again, then it never was supposed to be for me. And I wasn't supposed to do this. But while I was healing up, I was this no, this is something I want to do. I miss it. I feel like I can do this. This is just something stupid that happened. So I was actually really glad that that happened. And yeah, it was eventually in October. That's when I started going more consistently and started training from there.
At what point did you get put in your first match?
I got my first match was probably a year later. So that was September 14th, 2014.
And what are the details on that match?
So we were at the Elks Lodge in Queensboro, in Queens Boulevard in Elmhurst. And I was set to face Candy Cartwright. We had set up like the angle maybe a couple months before at one of the shows where I did a lot of, I was the timekeeper for a lot of the shows. Obviously, we did ring crew and whatnot. They started using me as a timekeeper, and they decided, well, she played this really great Mean Girls heel character. And she called me into the ring, called me a loser and all this, and then gave me a suplex in the ring, which I was super stoked for because it was like my first spot in a show, and I was super super happy about that. So that's who I was supposed to face on that day. That day rolls around, and I saw Cooter, and he was like, "Hey," and he looked. I mean, he was always distracted on show days because obviously putting together a show, you're being pulled in so many different directions.
Oh, certainly.
So, I was just in the back. I was in the locker room getting stuff together, and then I went out to see if I can help, put chairs up or whatever it was. And all of a sudden, he came to me and he goes, "Hey, so Candy's not coming." And I went, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "So there's this girl here, so she's gonna take her spot, and you're gonna have the match with her." It's like, okay. So apparently there was a car of guys and this one girl from, I want to say either Connecticut or Massachusetts, is up north somewhere, and they had just come down. One of them I think had a match, and then the other peeps were just there to see if they can get some work. Which goes to show you, always go to shows. You never
always
know. Always bring your stuff. So she was there. Her name was Lucy Diamond, and she was where she wrestled. She was a super baby face, and in this match, she was going to, for whatever reason, he was going to make her the heel. Probably because she was, I don't want to say, yeah, I guess in terms of this, she was a little bit more experienced. I didn't know how much at the time. But I was going to face her, and we got together. She was a really nice girl, really sweet, and she just made me feel really comfortable. And I asked her, because it was my first match, I was like, "So, how many matches have you had?" I was so excited. She said, "Oh, well, this is going to be my 6th match." And at the time, I thought, holy crap. This girl knows it. She is experienced. She has been around for a while. If she has 6 matches, this is going to go great. Spoiler alert. It did not. A lot of friends of my family came, including my my partner, who actually decided to to stop wrestling. So that was the other thing that I had to sort of face with, was doing this on my own now. But everybody came, and I was proud of myself before the match, because I was actually, as you know, I'm always freaking out to remember matches, to remember spots and whatnot. But I was remembering everything. Like, we went over it so many times, and I started remembering things that she was forgetting. And I was like, yes, I'm getting this. It's clicking. This is amazing. Yes. Then, it's our turn. I think we were 3rd match on the show. And I came out first. Everybody's cheering. She comes in. And I know the first bit was probably something super simple, like just a lock up, maybe a universal spot. And we do that, and then I whip her to the corner, I think, and she's supposed to move, and she doesn't. And then it just went down the shitter after that, because I realized, oh no, we both forgot. Neither of us knows what's next. But I just had in my head the whole entire time, don't stop. Like, whatever you do, that was sort of instilled in us. Like, don't stop, keep going. Don't stand there like with the deer in the headlights. Keep going no matter what. And if nothing else, grab a hold, right? You've told us this.
Certainly.
Right? So I remember this. I'm like, okay, we're just going to keep it going, and I'm going to take a hold. And for whatever reason, I couldn't remember what holds were. So I made one up. And it was something, let me tell you. I know there's a picture somewhere of it, and it's just, God, I had it, like, she was, I think, like, down on all fours. I had her arm, like, back. I had her head, like, it looked like it possibly could be cool, but if you sat and looked at it, you're just like, that's not anything. You don't have anything. But we just sold it as much as we could, and the worst is hearing nothing, right? And for a while, all I heard was, and bless their hearts, my family and friends just sort of cheering and, cheering me on, telling me to come on. But really, those are the only voices I heard, because everybody else, there was just that air of, what the hell are these girls doing in there? This is atrocious. Finally got to, a point where we're like, oh, wait, this is familiar. And we're just like, okay, this is the point right before we go home. Let's just do that. And we did. And I hit my finisher. And 1, 2, 3, I won my first match. And that was it. And went to the back. And I was like, oh my God, that was awful. Oh, it's so bad, so bad. I kept apologizing, which I think I still do to this day.
Yes, you do. I watch you do it every time, even after I enjoyed the hell out of what you're doing. Like, stop apologizing. Yeah, man, it's those first matches can be such a doozy, and it really sounds like you were put in a position where you could not fail. You had no idea who this girl was. You weren't training for super long. And yeah, man, you're right. That silence is just, ooh, like it's just that'll put you out. That'll put you out real quick.
That's probably the most brutal sound. Is just that silence, or just that energy of what is going on, or it's uncomfortable, is what it is. It's pure cringe and pure uncomfortable. Ugh.
Yeah, I mean it's weird because sometimes you'll get shows where, for whatever reason it is, the crowd is just, tired or, doesn't want to get loud or doesn't care. But, like, after a while you get to the point where, like, yeah, I know how to, like, even if a crowd doesn't know me or care about me, I can still kind of get them to make noise and react to what I'm doing. But there are those times where it's just like, nope, and all of us still find that. It's just the worst thing. You out there and that crowd is just, like, sleeping and there's nothing you can do.
Woof. That was my first time.
Were you Katred at that time, or did you have a different name?
I was Katred. So Cooter had this thing where I don't know if he did it for everybody, but I think he did this for Faye too, where he just sort of gave you a name. So I think he initially had given her the Big Booty Trudy name. And then for me,
I wonder how.
And then for me, he didn't even ask me or anything. I just remember when he put up the card, it was Candy Cartwright versus Rennie the Renegade. And I was just like, no, that's not what I'm going. At the time, to be fair, I hadn't spoken to him about, realizing I wanted the name Katred and whatnot. So when I did finally tell him, it was just like, hey, I'm not too keen on the Renegade. Can we change it to this? And he was fine with it, thank goodness.
Where did the name Katred come from? Because if that is yours, I that's the one question here I think I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, you may have mentioned to me early on, but how many concussions since then? So I don't remember any of
You're
it.
right. I'm sorry. Also, thank you for pronouncing it correctly. I know there's so many people that say cat red. So many. And I know maybe there's going to be somebody listening to this going, oh, I've been calling her cat red this whole time. It's not. It's okay, but it's not. It's Katred. Um, Katred actually comes from one of my very best friends from college. Um, Her name was Katie, but she sort of took on this persona that she labeled Katred, and she was just, it was, if you can mash up a face and a heel, that's what it was. She would hug you one minute and then just bite you in the neck the next minute, and you're like, Katred, what the fuck? She was one of my very best friends, and she was one of the first people that I told when I finally made the decision to start wrestling again, to try again, I should say. And I remember calling her on the phone. I'm like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna find a school. And she was like, oh, yes, finally. I've been waiting for you to figure out that this is what you're supposed to do. And I don't know why. I remember distinctly on the phone with her and just needing to say, I'm like, Katie, you have to be there. Like, I need you there, front row. And she was like, I'm gonna be there. I'm there, front row. This is gonna be amazing. And 2 days later, she passed away.
Oof.
So that sort of stuck with me, and I figured, if nothing else, she was going to come along on this journey with me. She was going to be with me the entire time, through every match. Every match is dedicated to her. Anytime I feel like I'm failing, which is so much of the time, I'm just going to think of her and say, well, you're not just doing it for you, you're doing it for Katie too. You're doing it for Katred. So Katred was a real person. So I figured, yeah, I'm gonna take that name in honor of.
That's some deepness right there. Like there's like that's is serious, and the fact remains you're honoring somebody with the work, and I mean, not to kiss ass, but in general, I think you've done the name a whole lot of justice, and I think that person be hella proud of you.
I hope so. I mean, there's a reason why, Angel is in the name too, because she's always watching over and she's always there every single time. And I know that she's been there even when I get injured, how she's probably saved me from a lot more and way worse injuries or anything else that's been happening during my wrestling career. So yeah, she's on every ride.
What other local promotions besides FTW were around once you started getting matches that were giving you shots?
So while there were plenty around, I didn't have my next match until like months later, because I was just like, oof, that was bad. I need to train way more. But there were still plenty of promotions around. Like I said, there was House of Glory. There was it's the one out in Long Island. Kip was talking about it on your
Victory.
NYWC.
Mm-hmm. That's
Yep.
another one.
ICW was another one. BWF. My God, I feel like it was starting to really pick up as far as promotions.
Oh yeah, a lot of people were really starting to run around that time. All that stuff is consistent because all those places, for the most part, are still running.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, there were a bunch in the tri-state area that were great. Oh, and also I don't know if you really count. So Cooter had the ring and the license and whatnot, so a lot of people would use the ring and whatnot, including Dragon Gate, Evolve,
right,
and all these guys. So I got to, even if I wasn't working a match, I got to at least do ring crew and be timekeeper for so many of these shows. And I learned so much just sitting and watching them. You know, guys like Tony Nese and girls like Sue Young, the Bucks, Caleb Conley. I'm trying to think of like so many people, like Dragon Gate and all that was super popular at that time. And while I didn't get to have matches with any of these promotions, I still got to see so much and learn from it.
Let's talk about your first wrestling road trip.
Ooh, first wrestling road trip.
I'm talking something that was like a couple of hours away, where it was literally like you had to find your way in.
I was gonna say, if you want to talk a couple of hours, I mean, there is technically England, but that was just me. But
that's still a trip. If that was the first big trip you had, like, I'd say go with that.
I mean, I went, not necessarily, it wasn't for wrestling, it was actually for work. But a friend out there had talked to me about Progress Wrestling. And he's just like, you would love it. You know, you should come. You know, I have an extra ticket. So I had gone and I fell in love with wrestling all over again. You know, this was after a period of, I'm sure we all go through this, where you doubt yourself constantly and just like, oh my God, can I really do this? Is it worth it? Right. And after going to that show, I was just like, yes, it lit a fire under my ass like you don't even know. And my friend spoke to the owner, and he's like, hey, you know, my friend's over here from America. Is it cool? Can she come by the dojo? He's like, yeah, come by. So I did. I made the trip out there, you know, took the train all the way out, and it's this little hole in the wall, and Jimmy Havoc, Ginny, Chuck Mambo, I'm trying to think of who else was in that ring. Just a lot of great talent was there. I loved how they warmed up. I loved the drills that they did. To this day, I still remember the sequences and everything that I learned there, because it was just the style that they did and their method of teaching was just right on board with what worked for me. And it's still a dream of mine to actually, you know, have a match over there. That's always been, I guess you were talking about goals before. That became the brand new goal. It's like, I just want to wrestle in the UK. Please, because the fan base over there is just incredible. I just loved everything about it. But I guess that was just by myself. It wasn't really a road trip. I think the first road trip might have been the one to Valkyrie. Remember that one?
Oh, I do remember that one.
Yeah, I think that was the first one.
I will say this, and I know you're aware of this as well. Mm-hmm. Katred is 100% on my top 5 of people to travel with, always. Because not only are you just a great person and you follow all the right rules of the road and dope, but music-wise, like that's the thing that a lot of people miss, is that you need somebody to be able to DJ well, or everybody in the car has to be able to make that work. And you are just top-notch at being able to, like, pull stuff out of nowhere and get everybody in the car singing at, like, 1 a.m. when we're driving back from some, like, P-Donk town. The best.
You just like the fact that I can spit the rap portion of Waterfalls. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, that really, legitimately, ladies and gentlemen, you'll probably never see it at some point, although, who knows, maybe somebody will book Katred and I in a match against each other where the loser has to, if she loses, she has to rap Waterfalls. If I lose, I have to rap all of Getting Jiggy with It.
Yes, please.
It's been referenced on the show too. Nyla Rose referenced it.
Did she?
Yeah. So yeah, like that's top-notch stuff. Top-notch.
Yeah, I've always had a blast rides with you guys. Going to Valkyrie was probably the first one, but after that, I mean, any time that we went to Blitzkrieg have been some of my favorites, especially because, I mean, obviously, we would hit up the comic book store, and that was the best.
So now we're going to get to the part where I'm hoping this is going to be your favorite part, because it's going to be something that we could talk about forever as it pertains to you, because it's something that I've gotten on your ass about plenty of times. Let's talk about self-doubt and how that works for you. So I think we don't even have to ask, like, when did you did, and you mentioned it earlier on. Talk to us about what that self-doubt did for you and how you were able to kind of, I don't want to say overcome it, because it is still something that you're dealing with, which is perfectly okay. I think it's perfectly fine to be a harsh critic on yourself and doubt yourself. But how is it that even with all of that, you're still able to just fucking get up and go every time?
Oh, bless your heart for saying that. Yeah, self-doubt and just anxiety when it comes to wrestling is still something that I deal with every single time. I mean, there's nervous, and then there's just like full-blown panic attacks. I mean, you're right. It's not necessarily that I've overcome it. It's something else that's just basically like, go out there and go do your job. Like, this, yes, this is for you, but you start to remember that there's a whole audience outside, out there waiting. And if this was just solely for you, then you would just be home doing wrestling moves. Then why are you out here? Why are you at the show? So it's sort of this thing where I've kind of told myself, people are relying on you. Your opponent is relying on you. There's somebody out there in the audience, maybe more than one, that is having a shit day or a shit week, and they just feel the worst. And this is the only thing that might give them a smile or just make them forget just for 10 minutes maybe. And if you can do that, then you've done your job, because it is about the audience. And that's what we grew up with. We grew up watching wrestling because it made us feel something, and now here's your opportunity to make someone else feel something. And if you can't get out of your own head just for a brief time, you can come back to it and batter yourself and yell at yourself afterwards, but just take this time for this match to just make someone's day. And that's sort of what's been a bit helpful recently.
If you could go back, use a time machine, and speak to Katred day one of training, what advice would you give her?
Don't do a back body drop.
The simplest of theories, huh?
Right. Oh man, I hope I don't cry. No, all right, hold it together. I tell her to let go, and I tell her, even though my tone is very serious, to please have fun. Please, I'm begging you to start having fun. Don't go there and start feeling like everyone is, judging you or critiquing. And you know what? Maybe they are, but I'm sure a lot of that is in your head, and it's not doing any good for anybody. But if you remember why you love it and how much fun you had just being in that boxing ring and just messing around, this journey is going to be a whole lot easier and better for you.
Beautiful stuff as always. Now in a complete and utter switch of gears.
Good, because getting emotional. Go.
Well, listen, I trust me, I'll get emotional in the outro when I put my guests over.
Oh, dude.
I have a theory, and that theory is that the weirdest, most unique, most interesting people that we meet in professional wrestling come into our lives in our first year. So, Katred, please tell us about the weirdest, most unique, oddest, whatever personality that you met in pro wrestling early on.
Oh, man. What a great question. I kind of want to just go with, I mean, this is probably not the right answer, but I just want to go with the first thing that popped into my brain.
Usually the best option.
And I'm gonna have to go with Banana Man.
Whoa. Oh my God.
Yes,
Oh,
Banana
wait,
Man.
I remember the Banana Man.
So he would come out. So he would work ring crew, right, and do a phenomenal job. Wouldn't really talk to anyone. He was just really focused on making sure chairs were up, ring was done right. And then go in the back, you wouldn't see him. And then all of a sudden you saw that he was on the card and he was in a giant banana costume. And he would come out to a remix, like a techno remix of Harry Belafonte's Daylight Come and We Want to Go Home. Come in and start a match, and then halfway through the match, which was mostly comedy based, by the way, super over. Like,
Who's gonna boo a banana?
Hella over. Halfway through the match, he would usually stop the match and reach into his suit and take out 2 maracas, and the peanut butter and jelly song would start playing. And
sheer brilliance.
It really was. It was fantastic. And I was like, oh, I need to find this. It has to be on YouTube somewhere, because that was just brilliant and probably paved the way for guys like Hot Dog Starks.
Oh my God. Like, it's funny that we're laughing about it, but like, you're not wrong in any way, shape, or form that like the Banana Man 100% made it possible. The guy in the banana suit made it possible for the guy in the hot dog suit to do his thing. Just, oh my God. I cannot tell you how happy I am to have had that brought back into my brain. Sweet Sassy Molassie. I'm fucking so excited that you brought that up.
If I find it, I'm definitely sending it to you.
Oh my God, I'm so stoked right now. With that said, we're winding down here. Where can people find you on social media or anything else you'd like to hype up?
I'm on Twitter, but I've sort of stayed away from Twitter because it can get intense over there.
Oh yeah, wrestling Twitter is toxic as fuck.
It's interesting. So I'm mainly on Instagram, and if you do want to follow me, it's at Clockwork Angel Katred. But also, I mean, is it okay to plug other people, other things?
Plug anything that you'd like to plug, especially at this point when things are what they are.
Yeah, on that topic, just gosh, if you do have the means, and I stress that because I know it's hard times right now, hard times, baby. Please, Feeding America is a great charity. If you're local in New Jersey, Fit Food NJ, they are awesome. They not only do packaged meals, but if you donate, they also do packaged meals for healthcare workers, and they are delivering daily to them, which is amazing. As far as wrestling and our brothers, sisters, everyone in wrestling, indie wrestling, God, Gabby Ortiz, Tara Calloway, Erica Lee, Faye Jackson, who are like killing it on Patreon. So is Solo and Willow. Buy shirts, some pro wrestling tees. Juba, go support Juba. I'm
gonna step in and say don't support Damcha. I'm completely joking. Juba's one of my closest friends. Everyone, please support Juba.
Oh my God, Skylar. Delmy just came out with a shirt today. I don't know when this is going up, but she came out with a shirt that all the proceeds go to St. Jude's Hospital and Mental Health America, which is amazing. If you want to support gear makers, Seems Legit Sewing is killing it. Falaba, who's killing it in Impact. All these people. AMS, you, of course. And this is free. Just listen to Logan's podcast. Gosh, there are so many free things that you can do. Team Tremendous, Dan Barry and Bill Carr just came out with a podcast that's hilarious. Go support them. Kip Stevens. And if nothing else, God, which is 100% free, please be kind. Just be kind to each other, especially the people who are out there that are essential or, who are doing retail, who are in grocery stores, UPS, postal, all these people that are doing jobs. And it blows my mind that people can be so unkind and just, I don't understand it. It hurts my heart. And just, if you could just take a moment, I know it's scary and it's confusing and you're angry and annoyed and terrified out there, and I get it. But if you could just take a moment before you just lash out because of all of that, and just realize that people are just doing their jobs and they're just trying to get by too. Kindness and compassion, really, it's free and it goes such a long way.
I think the most telling thing of this podcast, just in general from what this has been, is the fact that when you had the opportunity to hype up all the shit that you're doing and give the time to, get your shit in, kid. You took that opportunity to put over not just friends that you have, but put over just human beings and ask the world to just be better. And I think there's no better way to describe you. Like, there's nothing else that I could say here that I normally would that describes you any better than you just did without even saying anything. The world is a better place because of people like you in it, but specifically you, because you are one of those people who gives and gives and gives and never once asks for anything in return and is never looking for anything in return. It was never a question of if you do this podcast, it was when. It was never a question if you'd marry my partner and I, it was just when.
Don't stop.
And I told you I'd get emotional doing it. You, like I said, you are a person that I think I aspire to be more like daily, and I think the more people that you bring into your life and spread your message of positivity to, the better the world gets. So, Katred, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for doing this, and just thank you for fucking being you. Always. Thank you so much.
Thank you, love. It's an honor.
Possibly in the near future, I'll have Katred on, maybe for a bonus episode, maybe for a YouTube exclusive, where we can discuss her side of that crazy, crazy day in upstate New York that Chris Benet and I discussed, because she was part of that. But so stoked to have her on the show. Definitely going to have more content from her soon. Before we get out of here, you should go ahead and give us a follow on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at year1pod. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel on your preferred podcasting app and leave a review. Shout out to Heroes for the Music. You can check them out on Spotify. Shout out to Joanna Robinson for all the artwork and design. Jui Chan on all social media. Shout out to the Funkenstein Wrestling Superstore for sponsoring the show. Located at the Englishtown Flea Market in Englishtown, New Jersey, and on eBay. Make sure to check that out and give the Facebook page a like for all of your wrestling merch needs. That'll be it for this episode of the Year One Wrestling Podcast. I'm Logan Black telling you, be awesome to each other. Peace and love.